Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose, and the speculation and rumors continues to roll in for the Nintendo Switch successor. I mean, this is bound to happen with its announcement looming, hopefully sooner rather than later. Cross my fingers for that. But right now, a couple things do have fans buzzing. One apparently is a leak that points to its release date. We might know its release date now, or at least that's what some people believe. And then another that indicates that it will indeed have backwards compatibility. I know everybody's wanting that, and I do as well. And maybe we got our first indication that, yeah, it might possibly. So we're going to talk about both of those today, as well as a PlayStation 5 leak that I think is a little bit surprising with the timing, but it is something that is very, very welcome. Let's just go and jump right into things, though, starting off with Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. We've been talking about this game a lot here recently, and as you all may know, I've been pretty optimistic about this game. I am a huge fan of Rayman Origins and Legends. I think that those are some of the best 2D platformers of all time, much better than the recent Mario Wonder, in my opinion. Fight me on that. But The Lost Crown is coming from the same team. So as soon as I heard that, that's when I really started to get excited about this game, and you know what? They've done it yet again. I'm thrilled to say that Prince of Persia fans can be very happy today because The Lost Crown marks a triumphant return for the franchise. It currently has an 86 overall score on Metacritic with more than 60 reviews, and it's being described as one of the best Metroidvania games the genre has to offer. It also runs spectacularly well on all platforms, which is something that I can actually attest to myself. I ended up downloading the free demo on the ROG Ally, the Switch OLED, the Xbox Series X, and the PlayStation 5 to see how they all compare. And the PlayStation 5 and Xbox does run at 4K 120, and they look absolutely gorgeous. The Switch OLED runs at 720p 60 FPS on handheld mode, 1080p if docked. The image quality isn't quite as impressive as other platforms, which, you know, that is to be expected, but it does run very nice at that 60 frames per second. Then as for the ROG Ally, while that doesn't have an OLED screen, it does, however, improve some of the visual clarity. So I think fans will be pleased regardless of what platform they play on. But unfortunately, I wasn't aware of this until today, but it's not available on Steam currently. That was actually where I was originally intending to buy this game, so that's a little bit of a bummer for me. But nonetheless, this is a great start for the return of Prince of Persia. I just hope that it sells well and ultimately proves to Ubisoft that they can make other games than just copy and paste open world titles. Now, also, Hyperkin announced a couple interesting retro devices that's garnering some attention right now. One is a modern revival for the original Xbox Type S controller. Now, Hyperkin actually has a series of these retro design Xbox controllers, including the original Duke and the Xbox 360 controller as well. They did a pretty good job at reviving those for modern platforms, and now the Type S is the latest in their lineup. For those that are unaware, though, the Type S was a smaller redesigned controller for the original Xbox. It was first introduced in Japan and later came to other territories, but a lot of people really enjoyed that controller. So if you're one of those people, or maybe you just like collecting these type of controllers, well, maybe go and keep an eye out for what they're calling the Duchess S. It will come included with Hall effect joysticks and triggers. It'll have a USB-C cable, a 3.5mm jack, and it can be paired with Xbox consoles and Windows 10 and 11 PCs. The only real downside of these controllers is that they're not wireless, but other than that, they are very well made. The other thing that Hyperkin is doing, though, is a handheld Sega Genesis, in which they're calling the M95. Now, I do understand that we have all kinds of devices that can already play Sega Genesis games, so you're probably wondering, why would you want the M95? Well, what they're doing that's kind of different is that you can actually use your own Sega Genesis cartridges. So if you have an old collection of games, you could actually add this to your collection and not only play your games portably, but also connect it to modern TVs. The M95 also comes with a dock that you can connect to your TV and even add additional controllers to. So it does offer something a little bit different than some of the competition. Even though it can play your cartridges, though, it should be noted that this is reportedly done through some kind of hardware emulation. Now that's still better than software emulation, but maybe not quite as good as FPGA. Still, though, I'd say that if you grew up with Sega, I think that this is a rather interesting device, and if it's priced well, you might want to keep an eye out. Okay, so let's just go into these Switch 2 rumors, and I mean, these just keep piling up by this point, but I think the first one here is actually pretty interesting. It definitely seems like something is happening here. It's really just a matter of finding out what that something is. What's happening here, though, is that fans have started to notice that several first-party Nintendo Switch games are going out of print. I mean, games do eventually go out of print when their sales start to decline. That's not necessarily a new thing. But when you start to look at the list of games that's going out of print, there are actually some surprises here. This list includes Paper Mario the Origami King, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, Pikmin 3 Deluxe, Metroid Dread, Kirby Stars Allies, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, Fire Emblem Three Houses and Engage, Yoshi's Crafted World, WarioWare Get It Together, Nintendo Switch Sports, Super Mario Odyssey, Splatoon 2, Super Mario Maker 2, and Mario Strikers Battle League. So, I mean, I think at first glance here, some of these games, yeah, they do make some sense, but there are some surprises on this list. I mean, Fire Emblem Engage, that's barely even a year old, and then you have something like Mario Odyssey. That's one of their best-selling games. So you would think that they'd want to keep it on store shelves to sell more consoles. It's a big-time attraction coming from their most well-known mascot. So what exactly is happening here? Why are these games being delisted? And there's been a lot of speculation. The first of which does probably make the most sense. Nintendo could be ramping up to introduce Nintendo Selects. This is something that they've actually done in the past for some of their other consoles, including the 3DS. This is where they take some of their critically acclaimed games and mark their price down with a new box art. Now that alone, I think would actually be pretty big news, just considering Nintendo, they don't exactly discount their games all that often. So to get a permanent markdown would be more than welcome. Now, if they do that, though, I'd like to see them get Astro Chain on that list as well. I'd like to see that game be a little bit more readily available because it's such a great and underappreciated game. The other theory that people have, though, is that Nintendo is removing their Switch games to reintroduce them with Switch 2 box art. Now, hypothetically, if that were to happen, the new box art could say that it runs on a Switch 2 if it's indeed backwards compatible. It's actually been pointed out that Nintendo has done something quite similar to this in the past with Game Boy Advance games that can run on the DS and even with the GameCube to the Wii. So when you hear this rumor, at first, it might sound like a little bit of a stretch, but it is actually a real possibility. For that matter, it could maybe even be a combination of the two. They might announce Nintendo Selects at a markdown price, and then also on the box art, it could include Switch 2 support. So, I mean, who knows, but I definitely think that this is interesting. It really does seem like something is happening here, and I want to hear y'all's thoughts on this in the comments below. What do you think all of this means? Now, as for this other rumor, though, did a third-party company just leak the release date for the Nintendo Switch 2? So this is according to AI Shark because they just announced that they're reviving the Game Shark brand and that it will relaunch in September to, interestingly, coincide with the Nintendo Switch 2. So, as you'd expect, this absolutely took off like wildfire. But you know what? Let's go and pump our brakes here for a moment and really think about this for a moment. Because first off, I have to ask the very obvious question here. Why would Game Shark, a company that skipped out on the current Switch, why would they, out of all companies, know the release date for the Switch 2? That, to me, does not seem very likely, because I don't believe that Nintendo is giving them any kind of secret information. So, what I think is more than likely happening here is that Game Shark is simply using the Switch 2's launch as marketing material. What I think is that they knew that if they suggested a Switch 2 release, that they would get a lot of headlines. And just look, it worked. I mean, we're talking about it right now. This is a brilliant move on their part because they're going to get all kinds of advertising over the next few days. So I don't really fault them for their wording. It's a smart strategy on their part. But no, I do not believe that they just leaked the release date. At most, this is an educated guess, and in fact, Jason Schreier later confirmed that as well. They did admit to him that they are only guessing the Switch 2's release. So there you go. Don't look too much into this rumor. Though I will say, I really wouldn't be surprised at all if it did come out in September. But what you all need to know is that we still have no concrete proof one way or the other. Okay, now we do have one more thing to talk about, and that's a new PlayStation 5 DualSense controller. This leaked early on Best Buy Canada, and this actually fixes a major complaint that a lot of people have with the current controller. I mean, okay, so here's the thing. I personally really like the PlayStation 5 controller and all the technology that it introduced this generation. It also feels nice in your hands. I think they did a good job on this controller, but the one consistent complaint that people have is with its battery life. Depending on who you ask, its battery life is anywhere between 4 to 6 hours. Now, maybe some of that depends on the game you play and how much technology it's using, but when you compare that to other controllers in the market, it's just not really on par. However, this new PlayStation 5 version 2 controller was spotted on Best Buy Canada for $90. Now, do keep in mind, though, that this price is dependent on its region. As an example, Canada does have higher prices than the United States. But this new controller does include two very interesting things. One is apparently that it comes with a charging station. Now, I do kind of wonder if that's maybe an error, but that is what the listing says. And it also apparently has quote-unquote exceptional 12 hours of battery life. That right there is the big thing that people are looking at, because that would double, maybe even more than double, the current PlayStation 5 DualSense. So that is a significant boost compared to what we have currently. So, at the very least, it does seem like PlayStation is listening, and they're working on a better controller that I imagine will eventually phase out the current controllers as they are. However, at the same time, I do think the timing of this is rather interesting, because this is all happening amidst rumors that Sony has a PlayStation 5 Pro in development. Now, that console is expected to release in late 2024. We're not expecting to see that anytime soon, but that's what kind of surprised me here. I figured that if they do have a new controller, they would announce it alongside the PlayStation 5 Pro. This leak, however, does kind of suggest otherwise. Here, it kind of seems like an announcement is imminent for this new controller, maybe within the next month or so. But one thing is for sure here, it does look like PlayStation is looking to make vast improvements for all of their main PlayStation 5 hardware in 2024. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode. Those Switch 2 rumors continue to churn. I do expect that to continue in the coming months. But until next time, peace out.